I never imagined I'd be standing at the front of a registry office in a tailored suit, sweat clinging to my back, with over 80 guests behind me and absolutely no bride. But that's exactly where I was. On what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Her name was Veronica. We'd been together for 5 years. Lived together for 3. She had this way of making me believe everything was okay even when it wasn't. I'd always been the kind of guy who forgave too quickly, ignored red flags because I believed in fixing what's broken instead of throwing it away. Maybe that was my mistake. That morning, she was late. Not by a few minutes, by an hour. I stood there, surrounded by flower arrangements and guests whispering awkwardly. Her mom looked pale. Her dad wouldn't look me in the eye. I figured maybe her car broke down or maybe she lost her phone. I kept smiling. I kept saying she'll be here any minute. But then I got a text. Just a single sentence. I'm sorry. I can't do this. No explanation. No call. No face-to-face. Just a digital punch to the gut. I stared at the screen while my best man, Todd, asked if everything was okay. I didn't answer. I couldn't. All I could hear was the deafening silence behind me. Everyone knew. Her chair was empty. My bride had walked out of my life without ever walking in. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 10 seconds. Maybe 2 minutes. Time bent around me like some cruel joke. But then something strange happened. Veronica's younger sister, Alyssa, stepped forward. We were never close. She was 2 years younger, always more of the rebellious one. Wore combat boots to Thanksgiving. Rolled her eyes at family dinners. But she walked right up to me, looked me in the eyes, and whispered something I'll never forget. You don't deserve this. She's been lying to you for months. My heart dropped. What are you talking about? She glanced around, then leaned closer. Veronica's been seeing someone else. He's here. She ran off with him 20 minutes ago. The blood drained from my face. I turned and scanned the crowd. People were starting to stand, murmur, check their phones. And that's when I saw it, Veronica's friend Danielle, sprinting down the hall with a bouquet in her hands, shouting something I couldn't quite make out. But Alyssa heard it. She muttered, "It's too late. She's gone." My knees buckled slightly, but I caught myself. There's something about being humiliated publicly that forces your mind to go quiet. You either collapse or you decide not to. And I decided not to. With everyone watching, the guests, the family, the officiant, the man Veronica ran off with probably watching from somewhere like a coward, I did something I never expected to do. I turned to Alyssa, the sister of the woman who just abandoned me, and I said, "Will you marry me?" There was a pause, the kind of pause that stretches forever. Her mouth opened slightly. Her brows pulled together. And then, slowly, shockingly, she nodded. It wasn't planned. It wasn't romantic. But it was real. And the next few minutes? Absolute chaos. The officiant asked if this was some kind of joke. Veronica's mom started crying. A few guests laughed, nervously. But the moment Alyssa took my hand, everything changed. I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in Veronica's in years, clarity. We got married. Right there. No dress. No rehearsed vows. Just 2 people who refused to be part of a lie. But that was just the beginning. Because what I didn't know then was that marrying Alyssa would unlock a family secret no one expected, not even her. And by nightfall, someone was going to confess something that would change everything I thought I knew about my ex-fiancée and her sister. The moment Alyssa and I signed the papers, the room split in half. Some guests stood stunned, others just walked out. A few even clapped awkwardly, more out of confusion than support. The photographer didn't know what to do. He hesitated for a second, then started snapping pictures anyway like it was some kind of twisted soap opera. The man Veronica ran off with? I never saw his face that day. But I would later. After the ceremony, Alyssa and I stepped outside. The air was heavy, like the world was waiting to decide whether we were villains or survivors. I turned to her and asked, "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked down at her trembling hands and said she did this on purpose. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She wanted you to feel humiliated. She's been planning to run off with Aaron for weeks. She said it would be more freeing to walk away in front of everyone. Some kind of dramatic exit she read about online. That name. Aaron. I hadn't heard it before. Who the hell is Aaron?" Alyssa's face twisted. Her yoga instructor. And apparently her soulmate since February. They've been meeting in secret. She used me as cover more than once. She paused, then added, "I hated lying to you, but I didn't know the full story until this morning." The shock hadn't worn off. Not even close. But the pieces were falling into place. Her sudden new habits. Her odd behavior around her phone. The way she started saying things like, "Are you sure you're happy?" as if she was trying to guilt me before disappearing. Back at the reception hall, which we still technically had rented for a celebration, people didn't know what to do. The band was tuning up like nothing had happened. The tables were set. The cake had Veronica and Matthew written on it. And now I was standing beside her sister, who wore a black dress and combat boots, as the accidental bride. Alyssa pulled me aside before we walked in. "There's something else," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's not just about Aaron." I froze. "What now?" She looked around, leaned in, and said, "Last week, Veronica told me something about you. But I don't think she expected me to say yes to you today." My stomach sank. What did she say? But Alyssa didn't answer right away. Instead, she took my hand and walked me into the reception. Everyone stared. The DJ, clearly rattled, stammered into the mic, presenting. "Mr. and Mrs. Taylor?" A few gasps, one loud cough, and then the silence stretched. That's when I saw Veronica's father storm out the side door. And that's when I knew Alyssa was right. This wasn't just a breakup. This was an ambush. And I had walked straight into it. After we walked into that reception hall, pretending like it hadn't just turned into a crime scene of broken expectations, Alyssa kept giving me these sideways glances. She looked like someone holding a grenade with the pin halfway pulled. I knew she was keeping something from me, something Veronica said, but she kept brushing it off, saying later. But later didn't feel like an option anymore. People were eating. Some were drinking like their lives depended on it. One of my uncles even gave a toast. A toast? He raised his glass and said, "To making the best out of terrible situations." Everyone laughed awkwardly, and I just stared at my barely touched plate. Then, while everyone was distracted, Alyssa nudged me and whispered, "Come with me." She led me into the hallway behind the kitchen. It was quiet, just the hum of industrial refrigerators and the faint bass of music through the wall. She turned to me, took a breath, and said, "Veronica told me she was going to tell you this after the wedding, but since that clearly didn't happen, I'm telling you now." I braced myself. "Go ahead." She hesitated, then said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. She was planning to file for annulment 2 days after the wedding. She didn't want to stay married. It was all a setup to get access to your inheritance. I blinked. "My what?" Alyssa nodded. "The savings your grandfather left you. The house your dad transferred to your name. Veronica found out through her lawyer friend that once you were married, she could legally push for access if things went wrong, and she was counting on things going wrong. She literally told me it's not about love, it's about leverage." I don't even remember leaning against the wall, but my legs had gone weak. All that time. I thought she loved me, fought for her, defended her, and she'd been calculating a financial heist. I shook my head, not knowing whether to scream or laugh. Alyssa looked up at me, her voice softer. She said if you ever found out about Aaron too early, she'd just ghost and play the victim. That's why she didn't show up today. Because you were getting too close to the truth. And then she added something that chilled me to the core. She didn't want you to know that you were never her first choice. Not even close. The next day, I didn't sleep. Alyssa had stayed at her parents' house, and I stayed in what was supposed to be our honeymoon suite, alone. My tux jacket was still crumpled on the chair, and the champagne in the corner bucket had gone warm. I stared at the ceiling for hours, not knowing what to feel anymore. Humiliation? Anger? Or just numbness? But sometime around 5 a.m. I got a text from Alyssa. "You need to come over. I found something." I didn't ask questions. I drove straight to the house. Her mom opened the door without saying a word, just waved me in like we were past pretending this was normal. Alyssa was upstairs, sitting cross-legged on the bed, holding something in her hands. Veronica's old phone. "She left it here last week," Alyssa said quietly. "Probably forgot with all the chaos. It was dead. I charged it. There's something you should see." She handed it to me without unlocking it. I looked at her. "You went through her phone?" "She went through your life." "Fair point." I tapped in Veronica's old passcode. Same as always, her birth year backward. And there it was. A hidden folder in her photos, buried beneath old selfies and makeup tutorials. Inside it were 5 videos. The first 4 were just her rambling about nonsense, but the 5th. It started with her pointing the camera at her own face, holding a glass of wine. She was lying on some hotel bed I didn't recognize. And then, like she was recording a confession, she said, "So if you're watching this, Matt, I guess you know everything. Or maybe you're still the fool I thought you were. Either way, I never planned to marry you. I just needed the status. And I'm sorry, but Alyssa always wanted you more than I did." She laughed. I paused the video. My hands were shaking. Alyssa stared at the screen, her eyes wide. I didn't know she made that. I looked at her. What did she mean, "You always wanted me"? Alyssa froze. And in that moment, I knew this mess was far from over. Alyssa didn't answer right away. She looked like someone who'd just been accused of a crime they didn't commit but couldn't quite prove their innocence. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I could feel the silence swelling between us like the air had turned into something heavy we both had to push through. I didn't want you to hear it like that, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a breath. So it's true. She looked away. It's complicated. That answer, it's complicated, always feels like a loaded gun. I waited. And after a moment, she sat down on the edge of the bed and started to explain. I had a crush on you, she admitted. Years ago. Before you even proposed to her. I never said anything because, well, you were with my sister. I told myself it was just a phase, that I was just jealous because she always got what she wanted, attention, admiration, everything. But then I saw how she treated you. The way she talked about you when you weren't around. She used to call you a safe bet. And it killed me to watch you believe her lies while she mocked you behind your back. She paused, then added quietly, the day she said yes to your proposal, she told me it was the most boring but practical decision she'd ever made. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Again. Alyssa stood up, walked to the window, and looked out like she couldn't bear to see my face anymore. I didn't plan to say yes to you at the wedding. I panicked. Everyone was staring at you like you were broken, and I saw her walking out with that smug grin, and something inside me snapped. I sat down slowly, replaying the video in my mind. Alyssa always wanted you more than I did. Was that just a cruel taunt? Or a bitter truth? Do you regret it? I asked. She turned to face me. No. Not for a second. But I didn't expect to feel this guilty about how it happened. And then, like the universe had been eavesdropping, Alyssa's phone buzzed. One notification. An email. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and her face turned pale. Oh my God. What is it? She turned the screen toward me. It was from an unknown sender. Subject line, you made a mistake. There was a link. A video file. She hesitated, then pressed play. The footage was grainy, clearly from a security camera. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing until the angle shifted and I saw Veronica. Standing in a hotel lobby. With a suitcase. Kissing Aaron. But not just a kiss. A staged goodbye. And then she said something I'll never forget. I'll be back in 2 weeks. He'll never see it coming. By the time he finds out, I'll already have access to his account. Alyssa covered her mouth. She was coming back. She was never leaving for good. My vision blurred for a second. All the anger, the betrayal, it wasn't over. It hadn't even peaked. Veronica hadn't just abandoned me. She had orchestrated the entire thing to seem spontaneous so she could disappear and return with leverage. And now she was planning to finish what she started. But she didn't count on one thing. I wasn't the same man anymore. 3 days passed after we watched that hotel security footage. I didn't go to work. I didn't return messages. I needed time to think, not just about Veronica and what she was plotting, but about myself. About the kind of man I had been for the last few years. I had tolerated, forgiven, overlooked so much because I believed loyalty meant endurance. But I realized then, loyalty without honesty is just slow-motion self-destruction. I stayed in a guest room at Alyssa's place. Her parents avoided me like the house was divided down the center, one half in denial, the other silently watching everything unravel. Alyssa was calm, quiet, strangely focused. We didn't talk much. But it was comforting knowing someone was around who hadn't been playing a part in the lie. On the 4th morning, it happened. I woke up to the sound of Alyssa shouting downstairs. I rushed out of the room and found her standing in the entryway holding the front door halfway open. Outside, standing on the porch like nothing had ever happened, was Veronica. She was wearing a gray coat and sunglasses as if trying to disguise herself, though honestly, the look on her face said she didn't think she needed to. She had that same smirk. The same fake calm she used whenever she thought she was the smartest person in the room. Oh, she said, spotting me. There you are. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Alyssa, on the other hand, was trembling. Why are you here? Veronica shrugged. I came back to talk to Matt. Privately. I stepped forward. Talk about what? Your little heist. She flinched. Just slightly. But it was there. You don't understand what really happened, she said quickly. Aaron and I had plans, but it fell apart. He left me. I realized I made a mistake. No, I said, my voice low. You realized you lost control of the situation. Her jaw clenched. She took a breath, reached into her purse, and pulled out an envelope. What is that? I asked. She held it out. Something I was supposed to give you after the wedding. I didn't because, well, you know. Things got messy. I stared at it for a long second before I took it from her hand. It was sealed in gold wax. Her handwriting across the front, for Matthew when everything begins. That phrase alone made me sick to my stomach. I tore it open right there on the porch. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Cold. No salutation, no love, no signature. Just a list of bullet points. Joint bank account setup instructions. Emergency power of attorney. Key contacts for legal filing. Notes about a trust account transfer. Pre-drafted annulment filing instructions. A breakdown of my assets down to the value of my car. It was a playbook. Not for a marriage, but for a financial takeover. She had planned every move like it was a corporate merger. I was nothing but a stepping stone. I looked up at her. You came back for this? I came back because you owe me a conversation, she said firmly. Alyssa cut in before I could reply. You walked out on him at the altar. He doesn't owe you anything. Veronica turned to her and smiled, but it was the kind of smile that had teeth behind it. And yet, you were quick to step in, weren't you? Makes me wonder how long you were waiting. Alyssa lunged, but I stepped between them. I stared Veronica down, my voice calm. You think you're in control again, but you're not. This isn't your story anymore. She blinked. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Fear. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I added. Everything you planned? It's gone. The trust is locked. My accounts are secured. Your name's been removed from everything. And if you try anything else, it'll go public. Her face paled. And just before she turned to leave, I gave her the envelope back. Take your blueprint for betrayal, I said. It won't work anymore. She didn't say a word. Just walked down the steps and got into a waiting car. But as she drove off, Alyssa turned to me. You know she's not done, right? I nodded. I know. And I was right, because what she left behind in that house would change everything again. Alyssa and I spent the rest of that day going over everything again. We double-checked my accounts, updated passwords, and forwarded everything to my attorney. I wasn't taking chances. Veronica had shown her hand and she wasn't bluffing. She had treated our relationship like a transaction, and the only reason she returned was because her investment was slipping through her fingers. But late that night, as the house settled into silence and Alyssa drifted off in the guest room, I found myself pacing through the hallways. I wasn't looking for anything specific, maybe just a piece of myself I'd left behind somewhere in all this chaos. Instead, I found something I never expected. In the upstairs hallway of Alyssa's family home, a house I had visited dozens of times, there was a narrow storage closet that had always been jammed shut. Nothing unusual, just one of those stubborn doors that sticks over time. But tonight, for some reason, I forced it open. The inside was cramped. Dusty. Barely enough room to stand. But tucked in the far corner, behind an old curtain rod and a cracked mirror, was a faded shoebox. No lock. No label. I took it out, sat on the hallway floor, and opened it. Inside were old photos. Dozens of them. Some yellowed with age. A few letters. Then, about halfway through, I saw a stack of printed emails. I pulled them out and read the top one. It was addressed from Veronica to someone named James. It started casual jokes, flirty lines, sarcastic remarks about wedding planning. But the further I read, the colder the messages got. He's too easy to manipulate. Alyssa still looks at him like he's her hero. I think it's hilarious. If he knew what happened in 2019, he'd burn the whole house down. My throat dried. What happened in 2019? I flipped through more emails. Most were deleted fragments, incomplete threads, until I found one that made my hands go cold. I told Alyssa I miscarried. But I didn't. I had the baby. James knows. I didn't tell Matt because I knew what he'd do. He's too honest, too boring. I gave the baby up. It wasn't his. I stared at the words like they were written in another language. She was pregnant? I had always suspected something briefly during that time. Veronica had been sick for weeks, always exhausted, snapping at everything. Then one morning she told me it was a false alarm and that she just needed to get her hormones balanced. I didn't question it. I wanted to believe her. I had no reason not to. But it wasn't a false alarm. She'd been pregnant. The baby wasn't mine. She'd lied. And Alyssa had no idea either. I took the box downstairs and found Alyssa curled up on the couch. She sat up when she saw me. What is it? She asked. I dropped the box onto the coffee table. Veronica left more behind than just a plan. She left pieces of herself. And now we know what she tried to bury. Alyssa reached for the papers with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned quickly. She gasped softly. She was pregnant? In 2019? I nodded. And she never told anyone the truth. She looked up at me, eyes glassy. That's the year she and James had that weird falling out. You remember? She said it was about business. But it wasn't. We sat there in silence for a long time, two people trying to make sense of a history we thought we knew. And then Alyssa asked something I wasn't expecting. Do you still feel like marrying me was a mistake? I looked at her. After everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the chaos, the answer came without hesitation. No. Because at least now, I know who's real. But I also knew this, Veronica wasn't done. And the next thing she would do would drag us both into the deepest part of her lies. A week later, just as I started to believe that maybe things were settling, I got a phone call. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. It was Veronica. Her voice was quiet. Slower than usual. Like something had drained the fire out of her. Matt, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for everything. Just for how it ended. I didn't say anything. She continued, I'm not coming back. You don't need to worry about that. I burned every bridge I had, including with Alyssa. I saw the pictures online. You two looked happy. There was a long silence before she spoke again. I know I ruined everything. I ruined you. But I just wanted you to know the baby I gave up. I named her Hope. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. Then she said the last words I'd ever hear from her. She would have been 5 next month. The line went dead. And with it, so did every final piece of who I thought Veronica was. I sat in the kitchen for hours after that, the evening light slowly disappearing around me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat with the quiet truth that some wounds don't bleed, they echo. Alyssa didn't ask what the call was about when she came home. She just took my hand and held it, and for once, neither of us spoke. Some endings don't come with justice. Some don't come with closure. They just arrive and leave you to live with whatever remains.